Mayor. We are rolling. We're rolling in 3, 2, 1.
Good afternoon. Welcome, everybody, to the City of Farmers Branch study session for Tuesday, June 4th. First off, I'd like to see if there's anybody here to address citizen comment on any study session item. Seeing none. Next item of business will be item C1, to discuss regular agenda items. Councilman Roman?
No.
Okay. No.
None at this time, Mayor. I'm fine.
Okay, I have one, and that is on K5. Do any of the council members need to know about Mr. Barbera before voting to reappoint him as our shared representative to the dartboard?
I'm fine with it.
No? Okay. And we'll be dealing with that a little later on. All right. Next up is C2, discuss an amendment to the Code of Ordinances related to residential certificate of occupancy permits.
All right, good afternoon, Mayor, Council. Christina Raimhild, Code Enforcement Manager. I'm here presenting a proposed amendment to the residential certificate of occupancy requested by City Council. A little bit of background information and financial impact. The residential certificate of occupancy program, it began in the 1980s, but it was free of charge at that time. It didn't change until 8/3 of 2021, where it was charged $60. And since August of 2021, about 1,260 residential certificate of occupancies have been issued. A financial impact, the revenue that we have received in 2021 was roughly about $30,000, 2022 roughly about $27,000, 2023 roughly $16,000, totaling $75,600. Our current ordinance, anytime there is a change of ownership or tenancy in a building or structure, a residential certificate of occupancy is required to be obtained from the City of Farmers Branch. What we are proposing at this time is to remove this language from the ordinance. We want to continue to enforce single-family rentals, short-term rentals, and multifamily through each respective permit and license, but the city will no longer be involved in utility connection process when residents purchase their new home. When conducting the research of our neighboring municipalities, we have found that none of them have a residential certificate of occupancy program. These are some of the few that we have gone through. The external impact we have discussed with Encore and Atmos, and neither one of them will be affected financially, and their operations will not be negatively impacted. What this means for our new residents is that they will reduce friction and confusion for the new residents during their home buying process, and it will align with our neighboring cities' processes, creating a smoother process for sellers, purchasers, and realtors, and it reduces the city involvement with their utility company. And I would like to open for discussion on how we would like to proceed.
Thank you, Christina. Councilman Roman?
I don't have anything.
Councilman Reed?
I don't.
Okay. Councilman Baird?
You said over 3 years, about 75,000 has come into the city?
Yes.
Do you have an idea of what it's cost us?
To
Man hours and,
more than that. We have more manpower put into it due to the amount of time that we have to do with scheduling, going out, re-inspecting. So it's definitely more man hours than the 75,000.
you want to take a wild guess?
Roughly double, maybe about 150.
Okay, perfect. That was it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Neal?
I'm good, thanks.
Councilman Jackson?
Thank you, Christina. Can you go back to slide 3? There was a bullet point that you kind of skipped over quickly, the second one on the left side about the current ordinance and what's involved in obtaining a certificate of occupancy. So just for everyone's benefit, can you explain sort of what it is the city does
Okay.
in the process of issuing a permit?
Sure. So when a citizen applies for a residential certificate of occupancy, they are not able to get utilities connected to their property until we come out and we have conducted an inspection of that property. And so before they are allowed to occupy that property and obtain electricity or gas to that property, we have to come out, conduct an inspection, ensure that there are no life safety hazards. Smoke detectors are up to date, any other code violations before we are able to move forward with allowing the release of electricity and gas.
So you're talking about electricity and gas, those are kind of big safety
Sure.
items, but there are other codes.
Yes.
right, that must be complied with.
Yes.
Things like chipping paint
Mm-hmm.
and other things that are more
Mhm.
cosmetic
Yes.
in nature. So I understand that there was a recent case where that was a concern
Mhm.
from a new resident.
Mhm.
What's the level of, I'll call it pain point
Mhm.
from residents with these inspections? Do we typically have gas and electricity issues, or is it more like chipping paint, broken window, roof, those kinds of things?
So it's never really that we have gas and electricity issues. What happens is when we go out there, it's to release gas and electricity.
Right.
But the violations that we are finding, you are correct. It's if a smoke detector is missing, if we're finding chip paint, if we are finding that there is like a tree that's overgrown over the sidewalk or the street. So it's minor code violations that we're finding that when we're going out to inspect these properties.
And so all of those code concerns are required to be rectified before they're issued a certificate of occupancy, which then allows them to connect electricity, gas, water, that kind of thing.
Correct, yes.
If we change this and we're not requiring a certificate of occupancy, then the potential is we continue to have overgrown trees, paint that gets worse, roof, windows, potential gas or electricity issues, right? Not enough smoke detectors in the property.
So what will happen with this is it will free up, like Councilmember Baird was asking, it will free up manpower. We will be able to go out and proactively see these items and be able to address these items. Regarding the smoke detectors, really the only times that we should be seeing these is if we're going, and we still will continue with the inspections of our single-family rental properties and our short-term rentals. So
Right.
we will still be able to address these. It's just more of like, for example, like the case that we had, it's a homeowner who has bought the property and they want to move into their property. And we wouldn't be infringing on their rights, but we will still be able to enforce and address through single-family and short-term and long-term.
Right. So I'm wondering if the ordinance, the certificate of occupancy ordinance, as opposed to, removing all this language for owner-occupied residences, if we couldn't instead focus more on the safety aspect of an inspection as opposed to trees or paint or those kinds of things, in the interest of the safety of our residents. Was that discussed at all?
It was discussed, and what we found was that we're able to discuss those safety aspects for people who are renting the property. Homeowners, whenever they're buying these properties, they have a home inspection and they're taking care of these safety aspects for the most part. And what we have found is that it's causing a lot of hostility, not hostility, but it's just causing a lot of
Oh, sure.
issues between the city and residents who have actually bought their property,
Right.
versus making sure that we're still keeping the safety aspect a part of it when we're checking out for rentals.
Right. No, you have someone that is excited to buy a new home.
Yes.
They're ready to move in,
Mhm.
and the city says, sorry, you've got to spend $5,000 to paint your exterior
Exactly.
now, and they've
Mhm.
not accounted for that in their,
Yes.
their process, and that's the part I'd like to avoid as well.
Mhm.
But I don't want to overlook the safety aspect of, the structures in our city and protecting our residents, in this process.
And then, Victor, do you have any for the safety inspection part of it?
Victor Pizarro, Code Enforcement Supervisor. With the safety aspect part of it, we're still looking at everything, even from the right of way. Every time that we do any of those kind of inspections, what's gonna happen here is going to be more of us being able to do things proactively, right? And we're also gonna be encouraging a lot more also our residents to use the FBTX Connect app to be able to provide us with those complaints too and concerns that they have. But we're still gonna be looking at everything. We're still gonna be providing all that service to our residents, just in a different avenue proactively.
Right, understood. I mean, I guess the other thing that can happen here is that you have buyers that unknowingly buy a property and the seller is selling them a property that's not, in compliance with the code. I'm sure it happens all the time. I bought one like that. But it just seems appropriate to have some kind of ongoing safety focus in a certificate of occupancy, requirement. And I realize our cost is twice what we're bringing in revenue, so there's still a cost to it. But I just want to voice that concern.
I have one question.
Sure.
And that is, this goes back to the slide that you're on. How do you know when somebody's buying a home, whether they're going to use it as rental property or not? You don't know. And so one of the hurdles that I see is that somebody may buy a house in Farmers Branch, and they may have declined an inspection. That's solely up to the buyer, okay? So you can buy it as is, and if it's a rundown piece of junk, so be it. That's on the buyer. Then they decide to rent that. We don't always know what homes are being rented.
That is true, yes.
We don't know, I don't know that we have a totally accurate account on what homes are listed on Airbnb and VRBO, even though we're supposed to have a company that monitors that for us. So then that goes one step further, because I don't know if we're collecting any hotel motel tax on that. But let's just go back to the rental properties. I would feel comfortable in saying there's probably more rental properties in this city than what are actually registered with the city.
Yeah.
Okay, so how do we get a handle on that? Can we get a handle on it? Is there a way, aside from this, that we should be looking to try to address that?
So one of the things when I was conducting my research and from my time in previous cities is one of the things that we were doing when we move forward, if we do move forward with this, and we are proactively enforcing these things, what we see is when we look at our Dallas Central Appraisal District, we are looking at that point to see if the residents live in the house. And so based off of that, if it matches the address of the property, then we know, hey, they are living in the house, or they're at least having their mail sent there. If they are not, then we will also add on, hey, we do not see a single family rental license at this time, and we're going to address it at that time. And so that's how other cities have been doing it, and that's how I would propose we would move forward with ours as well. So as we are addressing things proactively, we're going to check our research, our Dallas Central Appraisal District, all the researches, the tools that we have, and we're going to make sure that if we see that they are not living there, then we're going to address that as well as a single family rental.
Does that include turning those homes over to DCAD to remove their homestead exemption if they're being used as rental properties?
I have not done that. I'm not familiar with that. I can definitely look into that and see.
Okay. Yeah, I would say that that needs to be part of the process moving forward. So that's all I have.
Okay.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anybody have anything else?
Just a quick question. Is it basically triggered when there is a change in utility service?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So if someone's renting a property, they're still owner, but I'm renting it to Richard, and Richard is now putting electric and gas in his name, then that would trigger the,
Yes, and that is actually one of the other issues that we've been having. For example, if a husband and wife are living in the home, and I've gotten several of these phone calls, for example, if the wife wants to put the electricity in her name now, but the husband had it in his, now they're having to call us. We're having to go out, make sure that that's what the case is. And we're preventing the homeowners from being able to switch their electricity over, even though they're both living in the home. So it is by the change of utilities, but that is one of the problems we've been having.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is C3, discuss the Parks and Rec Department special events for fiscal year 2024-25.
Okay. Good afternoon, Council. Robert Diaz, Parks and Rec Director. I'm here. I'm joined with a lot of my Parks and Rec team, and we're going to go through a couple of presentations for you, getting ready for budget. So we'll go ahead and get into it. So the first one we're going to do is special events. We're going to kind of look at our events going forward, starting in the next fiscal year. Just in general, the events support the CBO. Number 4, support the evolution of arts and culture, entertainment and recreation in Farmers Branch. And also number 5, improving the overall and targeted community engagement. So when we look at special events, some of our priorities, we feel like we're going to refocus on really looking at community events, which in general, we always have community events, but with events like Bluegrass, that brings in people from outside the area. And so one of the things we'd like to do from a departmental standpoint is to kind of refocus our events more kind of the homegrown events. And then establish one major event per season so we'd be looking at an event in the winter, the spring, summer, and fall. And we'll work through some of that as we get into the presentation. And also, we'd like to focus on utilizing the historical park as our main hub for events. And with that venue 1842, which is the new venue out there, of course, the area in and around City Hall, and when we can, the Grove, which is currently, we've got construction on Denton Drive, so that tends to hamper the use of that area, at least for now. So just to give you an idea of the numbers of events that the department oversees, currently this year we have 5 larger events, one's each season, including it's a very busy October, but we'll go ahead and start as you start through the beginning of the year. We had a very successful new event, Gateway to the Globe. We had that in March. We were going to look to continue to do that, and we proposed to keep that event for next year. We get into our smaller events, the Denton Drive Live events. The other larger event is the Independence Day. Then as you get into October, we've got currently Bluegrass this year, Halloween in the Park, and then we'll have a Christmas event. So in total, we have the 5 larger events. Those are in purple. You've got the 4 Denton Drive Live events that are in green, and then you have the multiple numbers in blue. All of our sites, the Senior Center, the Branch Connection, Rec Center, Aquatic Center, all those have events throughout the course of the year, and those are the events that are listed in blue. So just to give you an idea of what we're proposing for the next year, we want to reduce, if we move away from that one event, which would be the Bluegrass event, we would go down to 4 events, 1 each season. We'd be looking at rebranding the Denton Drive Live events, since we're moving away from Denton Drive, and having those at different locations. And then also a little bit of a reduction in our facility events. So when you look at funding, what I wanted to do is show kind of where we are funding currently this year and what we're requesting for next year. So when you all see the budget, you'll kind of see where we're going with this. So with Gateway, we currently budgeted $35,000. The event we had back in March, we would look to increase that to 45 is what we're proposing, to look at. That was a great event, and so we want to kind of be able to promote that and add some amenities to that event. So that's the reason for the increased funding there. Fish and Fun, same reason. We look to propose increase in funding there. This is a flip of, we show both Denton Drive moving to a different kind of event. So we reduce it, but then we're actually looking at rebranding that. But we reduce our overall cost $10,000. Continue with Independence Day events, same for next year. So Bluegrass is where we have a slight change. What we propose is this $50,000 that we indicate here is really more seed money for a possible event for 2025. What we're challenged with is we still have to, it's a complicated event because we have to fund that event. It straddles budget years. It straddles, because it's in October, later October, we pay for some of the items in the current budget, and then we also pay in the next budget. So it's one of the few events that it has to use both budgets in order to make it work. And mainly that's because of the we have to put deposits down for bands and different things like that, get agreements in place. So we can't wait until the new budget year, can't wait till October 1st to be able to do all that. So what we're looking at is a possible reuse or pivoting, and we'll go through that. I've got another slide that kind of takes a little more detail. But doing that, so this 50,000 does not include some of the expenses that we would have for this current year. So this change that you all see, this 161,000, and of course it indicates to this overall decrease, we wouldn't see that really in the 2025 budget. It would come in more 2026 because we still have to pay for some of those items in 2025 for the event we're having this year. And then of course we have Veterans Day. We actually have a little bit of reduction there, and then we've got Christmas event that we would have no change in the funding for that. So when we look at Bluegrass specifically, just to give you comparisons of the current event to the proposed one in 2025, currently the event's executed by Parks and Rec staff through a whole gamut. It's a larger event, it's a 2-day event, it's the only 2-day event we have in the city. We have it's in the third week of October. It does require tickets. We have concessions, marketplace vendor. We have 2 stages. So in general, we spend about over 200,000 with revenue we had last year of about 70,000. So what we're proposing for next year is we have a really good relationship with Alan Tompkins. He's with the Bluegrass Heritage Foundation. And so we coordinate with him on the entertainment. And so we've had some preliminary discussions with a possible change to the event. So one of the things we've discussed internally is, and with him, is possibly moving to a Farmers Branch hotel to be able to accommodate the event inside. And with that, it would improve the event in the fact that we wouldn't have to deal with weather, because you never know what you're going to have in October. It also would help improve, we'd basically it help some of the hotels, because we're looking to possibly move it from the October period to summer, which is when typically hotels in the area have lower attendance. And so, like I pointed to in the earlier slide, we'd have some savings, and then and it's all depending on what council would want to do with that. It's some funding, the $50,000, which is what we've discussed with Mr. Tompkins about possibly having he would want that for entertainment. That's really what he would want, is kind of a seed money for the 2025 event. And then as we get into, just to give you an idea of how we would handle the family nights, which were the Denton Drive Live events, we would focus those, continue having those at the historical park. We'd look at some of the themes would be, of course, British Invasion. We'd look at a Tejano, maybe a Southern Rodeo type music. We would focus those in the April, May, and possibly move one of them to the September timeframe. And then like we indicated earlier, we would reduce some funding on that. In regards to Christmas, Christmas is a huge event. I can remember when I worked here 30 plus years ago when we used to light this whole area up and Santa'd come down and the fire truck, and it was impactful to the community. And so one of the things we'd like to see, the last couple of years, due to the construction on Denton Drive or proposed construction, and things have been moved around. Last year, they went to move the Christmas event back to the historical park. It went over very well. But one of the things we'd like to do, we've talked internally from a staff perspective, would be to try to move it back to this area. We would still continue to focus all the rest of our events at the historical park for the most part, but we'd like to be able to combine it with the tree lighting and have all the events, elements that we had at the historical park, but they'd be in this area. And then budget, like I indicated earlier, would be similar to what we had this past year. So really what I'm looking for, this is a lot to kind of digest at this point, but it's really to give you an idea of kind of what we're looking at events going forward. But it would be great for us to have some direction if we're moving in the right direction, or if there are items or changes, we can look to make some of those before, as we get into budget. So when you all see when you start working through the budget, you'll be able to see some of those changes. So I'll take any questions at this
Very
time.
good. Thank you. Councilman Baird?
How many people come to the Blue Moon Bluegrass typically? That's a 2-day event?
It's a 2-day event. We've got some numbers. Jessica, do you have any of those numbers?
Jessica Alvarado, Recreation Superintendent. 2023, we had about 5,000 people. 2022, 4,500. 2021, 5,000. And then pre-COVID, it was lower than that.
So do we have any hotels that can handle even close to those numbers?
Well, what we've talked about is would definitely be a smaller event than they have now. And it would be, what we've looked at is an area that would have multiple hotels, not just one hotel would support the actual event, but it'd be near some other hotels that would be able to have the rooms for the event. So then you'd have people coming in from outside the area, and it'd be all inside.
We typically book between 500 and 600 room nights
Okay.
per year.
So are they going to have music at all these different hotels?
It'd just be one home base hotel is kind of what we're looking at. And then you just have other smaller hotels with that
Where
venue
people would
hotel.
stay, but there's not any entertainment?
Correct.
Okay. All right, thank you, that's it.
Councilman Reed?
Saw a decrease in the budget for Veterans Day. Can you go over
Yeah.
what would be changed?
So, Robert, this one, the Veterans Day, is what you're
Yes.
indicating?
Mayor, Council, Jack
yes.
Biles, Branch Connection Manager. So with the Veterans Day, the past 3 years, we made an attempt to make a bigger community event, which is why the budget had changed. Past couple of years, we were planning on having a laser light show that cost $10,000. And what we learned over the past 3 years is trying to schedule a big community event like that and the amount of money that we had budgeted to kind of make it more inclusive for working military families and stuff like that and make it a day specifically for them is we battled the weather, and so we're stuck in outside elements, which we've lost 3 years in a row. 2020, we actually did host it outside due to COVID, and we were restricted to 161 participants. And that's kind of where we got the idea of, well, we can make this a really big community event. Great in theory, but when we actually put it to the test, the weather hampered us to be able to do that. And so what we learned last year is we held it at the rec center. It was a smaller event, but we still had a lot of the activities for the families to enjoy, caricature artists, photo booths. We also gave away hot dogs, hamburgers, and Texas corn. And so what we ended up using on that event was a lot less than what we had been spending. And so moving forward is let's make it a little bit more simpler. Let's not try to make it so big, and let's try to plan for it to be indoors. And so it reduces a lot of that cost.
Excellent, thank you.
Thanks, Jackie.
That's something about Christmas. Oh, with the Christmas event, it takes over a huge portion of historical park. What, if you could give me a better idea of where in this area that would take place?
Sure. Well, we of course, we light some of the trees already, and we have some areas that are already lit typically. We would want to increase some of the areas that we would light. We're looking at possibly putting the tree in the amphitheater area, just right outside this door, and be able to have a lot of the event in and around front of City Hall through the pavilion area next to the park. And so we would kind of spread out utilizing the whole area. The great thing is we have great infrastructure. We have lots of parking in the area. We would definitely leave all that. So it's just a beautiful setting. And not that the historical park isn't. What challenging there is to put a Christmas tree up there and do actual tree lighting. And because the park is closed, it's not open all the time, makes it difficult. So people want to do photo ops with the tree and different things like that. If we were able to do it here at this campus, we'd be able to leave the tree could be lit, it'd be part of the park setting. So it's just a different take on it. It's similar to how we used to do it years ago, and where you kind of could enjoy the tree through the whole season.
Okay, thank you. That's all I've got.
Thank you. Councilman Roman?
I don't have anything, but I think you guys have done a really good job of trying to simplify and make best use of all of our staff and taxpayer dollars. Thanks.
Thank you.
Councilman Neal?
Yeah, if you could go back to the slide for the proposed 2025 events. And I think you mentioned that there the total park events is 28. But as I walk around that circle, I only find 26. Am I missing something here?
Maybe we miscounted. So we will go back and double check that. I think we had, how many did we had 30, but let us go back and
So
check that. It could
Not,
be
not,
we
a
set
big,
the
not a
wrong
big deal. I
number.
just thought there was a couple missing that I missed. But to that point, there was some time ago, we used to have parades in the city for Memorial Day. Is there any consideration to have anything for Memorial Day, whether it be a parade or some other kind of event? Any thoughts anybody have regarding that?
I'd be open to that, but it'd be something we would need some council direction if that's something that we.
It's been discussed off and on.
I'd like to have some consideration for that.
Sure, we'll bring that up for future discussion.
Future agenda item.
The only other thing I'd probably want to add is that I'm a big advocate for the Bloom and Bluegrass Festival. I like the way it is. I think it brings a lot of people to the city. 5,000, 6,000 people is pretty good, pretty grouping. So I'm somewhat dismayed at moving it to an indoors event. While I understand your justification, would it be any possibility to possibly move that to like a May or June timeframe or different time of year so that you're not impacted by the budget, yet maybe the weather's not so bad either? Or have you talked about that?
We've had some conversations with Mr. Tompkins about, I believe there are some other spring events that we would be kind of up against, and I think the fall is kind of where this one fit the best. But that's something we could see if that's something council would want us to look at. We could look at some other options of something else at a different time of year.
Let me just provide a little bit of information there. Both Councilman Jackson and I have met with Alan regarding the event. And then I had a meeting with him, 3 weeks ago, I guess it was, to discuss this further. 15 years of doing something, he's not sure that the attendance is going to get any bigger than what it already is. And the expense of putting this event on, which is quite large and quite costly to the city because it's being paid out of city budget for the most part. And so the thought was of adjusting the event. And he is okay with moving it to a hotel. In fact, he thinks that it'll work better during the summertime. Weather won't be a consideration, heat won't be a consideration. There's a couple of hotels that he can have that'll bid on this. We'd still like to have our name on it and be associated with it, but he'll be able to control it much easier. And I think an indoor venue especially for those music aficionados that want to come and hear bluegrass may be better for the purists, if you will, versus those that are just coming out for an outdoor concert. So, and then he can sell seats at his event, package it with rooms, and have premium seating up close for, like a VIP type thing. So he's good with moving forward in that direction.
Was there any discussion about sponsorship consideration of engaging various companies that might want to sponsor some of the event?
Absolutely, but
Assist?
I don't think it's incumbent upon the city to necessarily sell his event.
I'm saying, has he
Yes.
engaged? And
Oh, yes.
Has that not been successful, or you don't know?
He's had a few smaller sponsors involved, but he's not been able to secure a big title sponsor to put up the necessary dollars that'll warrant, 5,000 person attendance.
And if I could offer up one item as well, if it's also that you want to see bluegrass music, if this goes away maybe in the spring, we could look at one of the Denton Drive, what we redo those events to have one that's more, because those are the ones we offer in April and May. and also September. They're a smaller event, they're a more manageable event, but we could customize those to any kind of music. So we could look at a spring one that would offer more of a bluegrass type theme to it, but those are a lot easier to manage on our side. So.
Councilman Jackson?
Thank you, Robert. Yeah, I'm kind of sad to see the bluegrass at the historical park, change as well, because if the weather's good, it's a perfect weekend. It really is. But if the weather's bad, it doesn't happen. And that, in my mind, if I were in Mr. Tompkins' shoes, would be a huge risk. And the city would have put out money, right, to hold that event. So I think that the thinking, toward some type of change to sort of mitigate some of that risk, and to accommodate the changing economics, not just, the revenue and expenses, but broadly the economics of that event is prudent. I had the same question about the Veterans Day, just the reduction in the budget. The Gateway to the Globe increase from 35,000 to 45,000. If you want to go back to slide 6. What was the justification? Why 10,000? Why not 5,000? Why not 20,000?
I know this was a new event.
Right.
When we put the budget in place, we utilized all the funding for that event. We'd like to be able to offer a little bit more. It was kind of our test case this year. And so I think we just thought of 10,000. Jessica, do you know of any reasoning we may have looked at increasing that at all?
From my understanding, it's additional musicians.
Okay.
Yeah, entertainment.
Okay.
Because it was a shorter event this year. We ended it at 6, I think. It was so possibly extending it a little later, I think as well. So if we increase that, we would need a little more entertainment. So I
Sure.
think that was the big
Sure.
reason for
I
that.
mean, I wonder if 10,000 is enough, because it was a wildly successful event. It represents Farmers Branch, I think, at its best, an inclusive community. It brought many worlds together, and it was just such a great experience for so many people, those that live in our city and those that don't live in our city, that I'd be okay if that were 50,000 as opposed to 45. But maybe we go back and make sure our pencil's sharp on the
Okay.
number
We can look at that.
to ensure that we're, considering all the costs involved in that event. And then lastly, similar concerns to Councilman Reed. Thinking back over the past Christmas events over at Denton Drive, I don't think this area can handle the crowds that we had, even when it was 3 weekends, when it was spread out over 3 weekends. Seemed like there was a lot more people that attended, that event than what we could fit, in a weekend here near City Hall. So I challenge the team to make sure that they've thought through that.
Okay. Thank
That's
you.
all, Mayor. Thank you.
You bet, thank you. So, Robert, I'd like to ask, in regards to the Christmas event, did I miss it? I didn't see Liberty Plaza down here. You had talked about over here,
Correct.
but not Liberty Plaza.
Correct.
And I think one of the really exciting things that we did, personal opinion, so I'm going to editorialize just personally here, was last Christmas when we had the activation at Liberty Plaza, and they had Denton Drive blocked off, and they had a little train running around, and there were vendors, set up in the grove, whatnot. Granted, we may not be able to do that this year because of construction, but that was really cool. And I thought the park department and staff did an excellent job of putting that together. So
I think
would you look
that's-
at that in the future after we get through some of this?
Sure. I think once construction is done around that area, around the Grove, Liberty Plaza, and Denton Drive area, I think that's definitely a place we would want to activate. I just think it's just has a lot of challenges upcoming with all the construction and things. And so I think we would do well having something out here. I think it does lend itself to more of a hometown atmosphere. I like the fact that we can leave the tree out here. That's another, something that I feel like is important to a community, is to be able to have a tree that's accessible and where people can, and it fits well into the park. We will look at, I definitely don't want to overload the area as well, but I know we've got quite a bit of access to different avenues of parking and infrastructure in this area. So, I think we can make a good event, make it happen. But it's definitely something we'll have to talk through and the logistics and things like that. But we definitely could activate, and that's one of the areas that I saw we still would like to be able to utilize from time to time. We have a lot of infrastructure investment in that Grove area and Liberty Plaza. So I believe, that area, the historical park, and then out here will be kind of our primary targets.
Okay. And then lastly, I will close by saying a strong second for Councilman Neal's idea of a parade, whether it be 4th of July or Memorial Day or something. I remember when I grew up riding bikes in the neighborhood parade and doing all that. And so I just think you talk about small town, hometown, that's it.
Okay.
So
Do we have a number on attendance at last year's Christmas event?
We do. It was in that 5,000 to 6,000 range, and this was at the historical park last year. So, and we would look at probably that same number. I can see that number being in this area. And a lot of the infrastructure would be left available, because you have to think too, we have all the creek area and the park and Gussie Field. And so I don't know if any of you were here for the fishing event, the fishing fun, but I mean, we had people all the way up to Valley View, and there was people everywhere. So the park can accommodate quite a bit. And we have access to parking at Oregon Park and different things like that. So anyway, but yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Robert. Stay there. Next up is item C4, discuss the Parks and Rec Department capital improvements projects for fiscal 2024-25.
We did this on purpose. We kind of know what we've kind of been doing is we're just going to keep going with parks. So let me get the slideshow going. Okay, we're going to do a brief overview of kind of how we're going to approach capital improvement projects for Parks and Rec specifically. I believe our presentation then leads into Public Works doing their first look at capital improvements. Let me get to the slideshow. There we go. So capital improvements would fit through CBO number 1, ensure strategic planning alignment to the current status of the city and mission vision, and number 3, plan for, build, and maintain high-quality public assets and infrastructure. So some of the priorities we've looked at internally for CIP for capital improvements would be, of course, to complete some of the ones we already have on target now. Those would be, we've discussed this at previous meetings, but we still have items left at Hoya Park. We're finishing things up at the event center. Branch Connection is underway. That's a capital project for us. We still have capital projects for Mercer Park and on target for Squire Park. So there's some items we definitely have left to do with the things that have been put in the queue. The other item is our Parks and Open Space Master Plan is due for an update. It was done back in 2020, and typically you want to look at doing those about every 5 years. And then we would love to refocus some of the CIP from internally to looking at infrastructure and beautification. There's been a lot of discussion. I know Ryan's done a great job of letting the council know about all the infrastructure issues throughout the city with regards to water and sewer and streets. We have the same concerns in parks. We have aging parks, and the staff here has done a great job of keeping those up to date as best we can. Through the Open Space Master Plan, that process, we would really, what I'd like to see is us reevaluate where we are, where we can put funding, what we've accomplished since the last master plan. So those are all the things that we would be working through. So just some of the projects I touched on earlier that were still in process. Of course, we said Hoya, finishing Venue 1842, Branch Connection, Mercer, and Squire Park. In regards to the master plan, as I said earlier, the current plan was done in 2020, and he's updating it every 5 years. What we'd look at as part of that process would be a needs assessment, what we need in the future, and then looking at priorities. Typically, a plan is going to look at also getting community input. So it's about time for us to look at some community input on what facilities the public would like to see. And then what I'd like to do, I've been involved in 2 or 3 master plans, and I've definitely used consultants for all those plans, but we'd like to be able to do some of this in-house. It might take a little longer, but we've got a great team, and I think we could probably do the job because we've got experience that we could be able to lend itself to putting a good plan together. So when you look at your budget, we haven't included any funding for updating the master plan because the intent right now is for us to do that in-house. So in addition to, and as part of the refocus, as I said earlier, we'd look at the amenities, operational items like irrigation systems, and of course our focus would be back on beautification for areas like medians and city entry points. So that's our overall picture of kind of where we are with capital improvements. I'll welcome any questions.
So when you talk about engaging the public, sort of like the CZO, the comprehensive zoning plan?
Correct, similar.
Doing something
Typically,
like
I've
that?
seen a couple different strategies on previous master plans I've worked on. We've looked at phone surveys, telephone, Survey Monkey type surveys to get some input. Also public meetings, typically similar to how comprehensive plan was done. Correct.
Okay, I would definitely be in favor of the public meetings because I think you get good we had good participation and people come, they hear ideas from other people and it sort of sparks additional thought. So to me, those always work really good and work to show some good public buy-in. Councilman Baird, any questions?
Nothing, thank you.
Councilman Reed?
I'm good right now.
Councilman Roman?
I think engaging people, and I think in the same creative way that the consultants that we use for the comprehensive plan did it, I think that was key. Not just a presentation where we're asking people questions or to provide feedback, but more so interactive workshops where people we can gather feedback through just creative ways. I know that there was at one point different colored buckets and each one represented some different type of advancement or development in the city, and you had a certain number of dollars and you could put those dollars in the bucket. Little things like that I think were really helpful. So when we do these public outreach activities with the public, I think it's important that we do them in a workshop style.
And just to piggyback off that, Councilman Roman, what I've seen also in the past is having engagement at some of the events. And as you saw earlier, we have a lot of events. And I think us being able to actually get engaged with the public at those events is a good tool for us as well.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's it.
Councilman Neal?
I just want to echo the mayor and Councilman Rowan's position on engaging the residents
Okay.
as much as possible.
Thank you.
Councilman Jackson?
Thank you, Robert. Do we have any insights from our recent comprehensive plan efforts that can help us align, our Parks and Rec master plan?
I do know that from that process, the planning department did look at the current master plan that we have that we showed on the presentation, and then also the Trails master plan that Parks Department actually had input in sustainability, and Public Works is doing that currently. So I think we would take both those, the transportation plan or the one that Public Works is working on, the update to the Trails master plan, with the current plan we have, those and the comprehensive plan. I think all those documents can work together and be part of our update.
Yeah, that's just what I'm suggesting. Let's make sure that we, I like the idea of doing this in-house, not going out and hiring consultants.
Okay.
But we paid consultants to do an awful lot of work before that we can leverage in this process. So let's maximize, those dollars and that material. Okay, all right, very good. Thank you. That's all, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, Robert.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Next up is C5, receive report regarding the Public Works Capital Improvement Program.
Is it this one? No, that's PD. All right, I'm gonna let you pick. Sorry.
You know, when
Let me get
Good afternoon, Mayor, council members. Ray Silveres, incoming Director of Public Works. With me here in the audience is Ryan Sarver as well, the outgoing Public Works Director. He's going to help me out as we do the transition here for the Public Works Department. So I'm going to take the lead on the capital improvement projects presentation here today. Okay. Similar to what Robert was saying earlier, we're going to discuss the projects that are currently in the fiscal year and the projects that are going to come over for the next, that are going to roll over from this current fiscal year to the next one. So as you know, for the utilities, we have Group A, Group E water lines at about $5.2 million. Those projects have pretty much been awarded and are undergoing construction right now. The Webb Chapel water line from LBJ to a belt line, basically from the south city limits to the northern city limits, is in the scoping process right now with a consultant to discuss the limits of what we want to do with this project. We had a meeting, staff had a meeting with them yesterday, so it's still ongoing and it will definitely roll over to the next fiscal year. The Farmers Branch Office Park Lift Station is one where it's kind of an interesting approach. We're doing a design build on this project and we have plans at 60% with the consultant. We did go out to bid with those 60% to select the contractor that's going to help us finish the rest of the plans out. And so we have selected Felix to do that. Felix is going to help us finish out the plans with the consultant, and then we'll go out but before we get there, they're going to give us a price to help us finish out the plans. Once we get that price, we'll finish the plans out, and then they'll give us what is called the guaranteed maximum price, which is a GMP. Once they give us that price, we'll come back. Both of those processes will require city council approval, and so we'll bring those before you, letting you know step by step as how we're getting with this lift station. And pipe bursting at various locations. Later on today, you'll see we have Fuquay on board during the regular items that we're going to do various sanitary sewer pipe bursting throughout the city. Okay. Projects planned for the next fiscal year. We do have $3.3 million for water line replacing. We're going to replace nearly 9,000 linear feet of cast iron water mains. You can see here below there are some of the roads that we plan to do. Similar to that, we'll have the sanitary sewer replacement projects. We're looking at almost $3 million of 9,000, almost 10,000 linear feet of sanitary sewer, mainly your clay pipes. And here are the easements that we're doing between these between these roads. As far as streets and traffic go, this one's going to get a little bit interesting here. The first one up is Valley View from Denton Drive to Dennis Lane. This is a multi-phase project. You will hear a presentation from Deputy Director Shane Davis as well for this project. This is going to have some grant money attached to it. There is a street reconfiguration that we're doing here, and Shane will kind of walk you through that a little bit more detailed, but it's about a $3.5 million that we're going to discuss here later with the help from the state and the federal government as well. So Denton Drive is another one that's similar. We currently have it under construction right now from Pike Road to the south by the Dallas Stars building. And then the new one that we're going to there's still two other phases that will be going. One will be from the Dallas Stars to the southern city limits. And then also in the same project, you'll have from Pike Drive to the north to Rossford Drive. Rossford Drive there. And then that one will be part of another IFA that we're looking to do, and it will be presented to you in further detail as far as when we get to the regular session. In addition to that, we'll have a 10-year project replacement of battery backups for relamping of 6 intersections per year. Basically, this is to make sure that our infrastructure as the traffic signal goes are aging, and we do have battery backups there that need to be recirculated every so often. And so this is a project we're just going to take big chunks at a time every year till we pretty much hit all 60 intersections. So we're going to do it for 10 years at 6 intersections a year. Estimated cost about $225,000 per year. And in continuation with the road, road infrastructure, we're looking to do 13 streets, estimated at about 3.4 for the upcoming fiscal year. Trails and pedestrian connectivity, we're still working with the West Side Art Trail. With the West Side Art Trail, and we're at 95% design with this project here. We are having cooperations with the city of Dallas and TxDOT on this project, and it seems like we are kind of just waiting for Dallas to approve their part that's going in there, and TxDOT is also waiting on the city of Dallas, but we do have some grant money coming there as well. For the Rawhide Greenbelt, this is a 12-foot wide trail. So is the West Side Art Trail. It's a 12-foot wide trail, but the Rawhide Greenbelt 12-foot wide trail is also another project that we're doing. It's out for bid right now, and we're trying to get that to come in and hopefully get this project started later in the summer. And so this one will definitely go into the next fiscal year as well. The Valley View Mercer Parkway pedestrian crossing, this one here is just an intersection that we're improving for pedestrian connectivity and allowing the pedestrians to cross this intersection better. This would also, staff will be applying for alternative grant from the North Central Texas Council of Government, COG. And the stormwater, what we have here before you is we have Reach 4, which is in the permitting phase with the Corps of Engineers. We had to get a permit for this phase of the project, and so it's in there. They have finally approved the permit late last week, so we're going to go ahead and move forward and try to get this project out to bid. This project, I'm going to skip down to Reach 2, is Reach 4 is downstream of Reach 2. So once we get Reach 4 out into construction and bidded, we can start finalizing the design for Reach 2, since they will kind of be working in tandem with each other. So we have to get Reach 4 into construction before we can start Reach 2. The Valley View Rawhide Bridge construction, this is a project that would also be, it's going to be before you in a regular council item. We have this project bidded out. We do have the low bidder that will be awarded tonight. And this is just to do some repair to the existing culvert on Valley View as it crosses Rawhide Creek. And this will be to stop the further deterioration of the concrete culvert apron that's currently taking place right now. And with the storm we recently had, it's only going to get worse. So this is a project that we're looking to do here quickly. The Ford Road water main replacement and protection. Now this one here is an interesting one because it says right there water main replacement, but it is crossing the creek at Farmers Branch, and there is a lot of cleanup we have to do to that creek as well. So although it is going to be a water main replacement project, there's a little bit more detail that we're going to do with the drainage in that area as we do this design. It currently is at 30%. And with that, if there are any questions from the council, I would take it at this moment.
Thank you very much, Ray. Councilman Baird?
Could you come back to me?
Sure. Councilman Reed?
I noticed that there was a couple of projects that are taking place on some of the same roads at the same time. Is that all going to be coordinated? You know, Valley View was brought up a lot. I know it's a large, long road, but there seemed like there was a lot of crossover, especially out front here, coming from Denton Drive to Nestle down to like Tom Fields area.
So there is, and I'll let Ryan speak to it, but this is a project that we may have to cut up into two different phases depending on what the funding situation is going to do with, as Shane will present later on with the funding from TxDOT. We may have to cut that up into some pieces, into some phases.
Ryan Sorter, Director of Public Works. There's going to be a lot of construction on Valley View. It is going to be phased. We are actually fixing to start a small portion of construction out there here pretty quick. We're going to be pipe bursting the existing sewer, trying to get it replaced because it is in horrible condition. We can barely maintain it. There's sections of that line we can't even clean right now. It's so bad. So we're fixing to pipe burst that. Pipe bursting alleviates a lot of the remediation costs associated with these types of projects. We're going to go ahead and get that out of the way. We'll be doing a water line replacement on that road as well before we start the construction of the street paving. And then we'll be phasing the construction of the roadway itself, which will start essentially at the railroad tracks and move down to Nestle. Once that's done, phase 2 will that'll be all cleaned up, remediated, then phase 2 will start, which will start from Nestle to Dennis Drive. And that will include the trail connection to the existing Rawhide Trail as well. But yes, Valley View is going to be unpleasant once we start construction on that, because it's going to be a nonstop process. And there will be a lot of communication and public outreach, letting the public know, hey, you may want to find a new route for a little while. The biggest problem with Valley View is the time constraints on it. Because there is federal funding that's attached to it, there's some ILA money that's attached to it. We do have a drop dead date for these projects. They have to be basically completed by April of 26. Which means we're probably going to overlap a little bit into TxDOT depending on what they do with the frontage road situation. So it's not going to be a pleasant situation at all for a little while.
Thanks, Roger. That's all I have.
Okay, great. Councilman Roman?
I'm good.
Okay. Councilman Neal?
Yeah, if you could go back to that trail slide, I just want to understand the West Side Art Trail.
Sure, yeah.
Is that, were you going to talk about that, or?
Good. Yes. Shane Davis, Deputy Director of Public Works. The trail has been underneath sustainability and now in Public Works. It's still with me and Maria Mentor.
Just trying to understand the mitigation of congestion. What congestion do we have?
That is the funding source. So I can talk about that in my
That's the
presentation.
funding.
There's the different funding sources. There's surface transportation block grants, there's alternative transportation, there's CMAQ, what we call it, congestion mitigation, air quality. So CMAQ funds can only be used for non-vehicular related infrastructure. So trails is a perfect way to use those type of funds. So that's what that means, or
Gotcha.
funding source we got for that project. The Denton Drive one, which we'll talk about later on tonight, is also CMAQ funding.
Okay. That's it for now.
Very good. Councilman Jackson?
Again, welcome.
Thank you.
If we can go back to the stormwater slide, I think that's ahead one or two.
Other way. There we go.
The Ford Road water main replacement and protection, that water main is on the east side of Ford Road and goes across the creek, runs north-south, is that correct?
West side of Ford Road.
West side, okay, all right.
It's on the outfall side of the creek.
East of FB Creek Bridge.
It should be west.
Okay, all right, that's what I wanted to make sure. I was
It's
correct.
actually on the outfall side where that apron broke down. And if you happen to drive by there one day and decide you want to get bored and step out of your car and look over the edge of that bridge, you'll look at that apron and notice that it's all caved in. There's one spot you can actually see the water line where it's crossing right there. It's
Okay.
in a precarious situation. We've already fixed it twice
Yeah.
in that area, so.
What does the protection
The protection
entail?
is, so right now you have an apron that comes across there and there's no footer. They just laid it out there, they poured some concrete under the edge and then left
Right.
it. So we're not going to extend that apron out beyond the water main, drop it down, put a footer. It'll be a retaining wall with a footer at the base of it, basically a 3-foot expansion block at the base inside the creek to hold that up and maintain that actual gabion and mattress that comes through there. And we're also going to extend out with some riprap on the outfall to protect from erosion on the far west side.
Is that main protected by any damming like the sewer main upstream is? Or will there be, or?
Well, it's actually, because it's gonna be under the gabion, it does have some
So
protection
have
under
that
that mattress.
protection. Okay,
It's the design right there is not great. We're gonna try and lower it. That's one of the big expenses, because it is an AC pipe. We're gonna come out beyond the perimeter of the bridge and try and lower that down quite a bit deeper than where it's at.
lower the main
The
down?
water main down, yes.
Okay.
To give it more protection, keep it from shifting and being affected by the creek like it is right now. Right now, the creek has a tendency to erode underneath on the east side, and that water comes in underneath that mattress,
Right.
which has caused a lot of the problems we're facing right now. So if we can get that water main a few feet deeper, that'll prevent it from being affected by that underwater flow.
Does that threaten the structural integrity of that bridge?
Yes.
Okay.
Those piers are so deep, there's nothing nothing that water can do to affect that bridge the way it was constructed.
Okay, great. That's all I have. Thank you, Ray.
Thank you. Anybody else? Oh, Councilman
Mayor.
Beard, please.
Shane, regarding the
Yes, sir.
funding on the West Side Art Trail, is that the total cost we'll be spending on that, or are there city funds also on top of it?
Yeah, that's the funding amount we got from federal funding. So if for some reason the bids come in over that, we'd have to find money as a city. We've slowly been kind of paring away any extras because funding is slow when it comes to transportation. That's one of the things I'm going to talk about is we've been working on this for multiple years. So we have the cost opinion, what it should cost from probably 5 years ago. Here we are, 2024, 2025, getting ready to construct.
Gotcha.
But that's the funding award. That's the amount that they will reimburse us for. Anything over that, if we decide to spend more, we have to find that money.
Gotcha. And then on the previous slide, Valley View from Denton Drive to Dennis. Am I on the right one here? Let's see. Are we taking away lanes on Valley View anywhere? I guess I'll cut to the chase there.
So, yes, and that is one of the ones we're going to discuss in the regular item as a part, in this study session, it will come with Shane and
Okay.
we'll address it there as to what the design configuration is going to be.
Gotcha.
But yes, there is.
Okay, I'll just wait for that then. Thank you, that was it. Thanks, Mayor.
Anything else? Thank you very much. Next up is C6, discuss the Farmers Branch Police Department COPS hiring program grant and provide direction to staff.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. My name is Cheyenne Kelly, Grants Coordinator with our Finance Department. Today, we are going to be discussing a grant opportunity for our Police Department through the COPS Hiring Grant. So, the Department of Justice, which is a federal program, and the division under the Department of Justice, which is the Community Oriented Policing Services, COPS, has released solicitations for applications for their hiring program. And this grant is designed to advance public safety and strengthen community policing by addressing the need for full-time sworn officers in local law enforcement. And so this grant, the COPS hiring grant, provides funding to hire new police officers to increase policing efforts and capacity. This is a federal grant that has where the federal government will match about 75% of the entry-level salary for each approved position for a 3-year period. And the maximum that you can receive per position that is awarded is $125,000. And then with this, they have a minimum city local match of 25%. And cities are required to retain each funded position after the 3-year period for a minimum of 12 months. And so why are we wanting to apply for this grant? Well, the Farmers Branch Police Department has worked with finance, and we've discussed and collaborated that the goal of requesting officers with this grant would be to establish a dedicated traffic unit aiming to enhance safety on our roads while fostering community engagement. And so this traffic unit would be comprised of 1 vehicle officer and 3 motorcycle officers. And the primary goal is to mitigate vehicle accidents, address traffic law violations, and promote community policing efforts. Community outreach and educational events will be done throughout this grant period to create a stronger bond with law enforcement. And the goal is to strengthen our ability to serve and protect the community. And so this grant, we could potentially have about $375,000 in savings. And so over the 3-year period, we are planning to apply for 3 officer positions, and each one would give $125,000, giving us the $375,000. And so what we have worked in connection with finance and our police department is to come up with what our potential city match would be. So over the 3-year period, we're estimating that the city match would be about $194,000. And then the $125,000 from the COPS hiring grant would be the $319,000 in total cost. And again, the COPS hiring grant will provide the 75% of entry-level salaries. And then we are required to cover the rest. And so we would cover anything above the salary that is not allowed within the grant, benefits that don't meet that threshold of about $41,000 per year, and then training and uniforms would also fall to the city. And so the timeline for applying for this grant, so the Department of Justice timeline is that the application has to be submitted by next week, which is June 12th. And then it is expected that awards should be released on or after September 30th. And with this timeline, we are seeking guidance and direction from council if we can pursue applying for this grant by next week. And this is an unbudgeted item. If we are awarded the 3 positions that we apply for, we would bring this back to council and have you accept the award and also understand the minimum 25% cost match share. And so just to let you know, as we open up for questions, we also have our police department here that can answer questions regarding the traffic unit and the police department side of the grant. And then I can help answer any questions about the logistics of the application. Thank you.
So-
Any questions?
Yep, so thank you very much. So the 3 years, we're responsible for 25%. But year 4,
Year 4, it would
it'd be 100%.
absorbed,
Okay.
correct.
And does that fall in line with projected staffing needs for the department where we would be able to absorb that?
Yes, and I
within
have,
budget?
I have Tammy Zimmerman here, our Director of Finance, that could speak more to our head count, if you'd like.
Mayor, Council, Tammy Zimmerman. So the 4th year is 100%. Now, the council has the wherewithal to accept if we are awarded the grant, knowing that it's unbudgeted in our proposed fiscal year 24-25. So we would have to amend the budget. So the 4th year, 100%. As far as the plans for the police department and staffing, the police department can speak more to that. I know it's in their long-range goals for this traffic unit.
I would think that just through normal budget increases, by the time you got to year 4, we would be able to absorb that, but I felt the need to ask the question anyway, so.
So every year, we look at our head count and we go through the budget process, looking at the benefits and the staffing issues. So each year has its unique challenges. Filling positions has been a challenge in the recent past. So it has been in the long-range goal, I know, with the police department and getting this traffic unit up.
Very good. Councilman Rowan?
How many new police officers have we hired over the last 3 years?
Jay, do you
Like
want to come?
during each respective fiscal year?
Jay Siegel, Assistant Chief of the Police Department. So to get you an actual number, when we say new, we don't have any new positions.
So we've not added any positions in the last 3 years?
Correct. So I would go back and see any of the positions that we got added over the ones we currently have. So we are authorized 88 sworn positions. And so we are just trying to hire to that 88 at this point.
Okay. So 3 years ago, it still would have been 88?
We were at 82. Then.
I would think so, but we did get, so one point of correction there is we do have 2 traffic positions for vehicles. And so that was approved by council some years ago. The exact how many years ago, I would have to check. 3 years ago, I'm not exactly sure, but I can look and get back to you.
Okay. What I'm trying to understand is what's been the addition of officers every year, and I'm trying to understand if it's, at what point are we gonna get to, like he was saying, we're gonna even up essentially in
Yes.
year 4, right? Like, that's what I'm trying to figure out.
Yes, sir. I think I understand the question. I hope I can answer that in the most simplistic term is, what we're trying to do is make up for the 3 officers that we're gonna put on motorcycles. So the council gave us 3 motorcycles, right? And so we had to put butts in those seats. And so those 3 officers came from our current staffing. And so what we would like to do and utilize this grant to do so is backfill those 3 positions. So to answer your question, those would be the 3 that would bring us to even, so.
Okay.
And then I think you also know that we're asking for a supervisor position in the budget here to supervise this nascent traffic.
Okay. And other than that supervisor, are there any other additional staff requests coming from the police department?
No, sir.
Okay, that's it for me.
And I did want to mention that we did approve at last year's mid-year a school resource officer and our public safety officer.
Councilman Reed?
Okay. I saw earlier that it was one traffic officer and 2 motorcycle officers. Is that accurate?
1 and 3.
So, yeah, 1 and 3?
So what we have now is we have 2 vehicles approved already, and now we're gonna have 3 motorcycles. So what we're gonna have is, we will have actually 6 in the unit, because we're sending 4 officers to motorcycle school, and that's why we're asking for another motorcycle in this coming budget up here. But so we have the flexibility. What we would like to have is 2 on one end of the week and 2 on the other end of the week, and then also have the flexibility when people aren't here to utilize the motorcycles that are open. So that's the ultimate goal. But right now, we've got the 3 motorcycles and we've got the 2 vehicles. Did I answer your question?
Yes, it did.
I'm
Thank
sorry,
you.
I kind of love it.
No, you're good,
All
you're
right.
good, thank you, thank you. And since the position has to be retained for 4 years, does that mean this particular unit?
So any officers that are hired under the grant funds, we have to keep that position for the grant period. And so they would be paid for out of the grant funds for 3 years, and then that additional year, you have to keep the position itself, is how the grant works.
Okay. That's all I got, thanks.
Very good, thank you. Councilman Baird?
Regarding the motorcycles,
Sir.
so if you have 4, do you have just 4, is it 1 officer per motorcycle?
Correct.
Okay, so no sharing or anything?
Well, now we would be sharing, and if we get approved for another motorcycle this budget year, then we'd have 1 per motorcycle.
Okay, very good. That was it, thank you.
One riding it at a time.
Yeah.
They're going to ride 2 at a time.
Be a good community outreach. That's like circus.
Councilman Neal?
On the potential savings, just for clarification, is that the bottom 319,000 per officer?
Correct.
So it's per officer for the entire 3-year period?
Yes.
Okay, that's all, I'm good.
Okay, Councilman Jackson?
No questions.
Very good. So staff does need some direction, so are we
Yes, sir.
inclined to go along with this, expressing your preference, because we're not taking an actual vote? Is everybody on board? I see heads nodding.
Yes.
Yes.
And then, just as a reminder, if we are awarded, then once that comes around, we would bring this back to council, and this would also have a budget amendment to approve as well.
Did that good.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next up is C7. Discuss the advanced funding agreement with the Texas Department of Transportation for the reconfiguration of Valley View Lane from Denton Drive to Nessel Road. We heard some of this from Public Works.
Good evening, Mayor.
Oh, there he is. I was looking for the other one.
Yeah, Shane Davis, Deputy Director of Public Works. So we're the Sustainability Department. We're the ones that sought this funding back in 2019, 2020. So that's kind of why I've been from the beginning till now associated with this advanced funding agreement. So as we're going to discuss this one. This is a discussion item. On the regular agenda tonight, you have Denton Drive, and it's an advanced funding agreement, but that's for a multi-use path. So there's two different uses for the funding in terms of AFAs. So what I'm going to do up front is just I'm going to go over funding. I'm not sure how many of y'all have heard, kind of know how funding works. So I thought I'd give an overview as quick as I can, and then we'll get into the details of the project, which I know is what I really want to discuss, but at least give you some background in terms of how, especially transportation funding works. So where does the funding come from? Typically, it starts at the federal level, U.S. Department of Transportation. From there, it gets passed down to the state, TxDOT. And then from there, sometimes cities will apply, the bigger ones, or they send it to regional entity, which is typically what we use. They go to the North Central Texas Council of Governments, our COG. That's where we go for most of our funding. The Dallas-Fort Worth area has a really strong COG, a well-developed one. If you go up to the Sherman, Denison area, not so much. It's almost non-existent. So how does this work? Well, again, the federal government has, we'd like to see certain types of projects awarded, state or local levels. Most of it's usually kind of general funding for road projects, highways, but sometimes they want to start pushing if air quality is bad in a particular region. Maybe we need to try and push them to find ways to have other types of transportation. So we discussed the congestion mitigation air quality type of funding, and that's what that's for. How do we start getting some folks to take other forms of transportation to get around when possible? So in this case, at COG, they'll do what's called call for projects. So the call for project outlines what they want to use the funding for. So I can't just say I want to use a road project for CMAQ funding. So as a call for projects, here's what we'd like to see it used for. And as a city, you look and say, all right, do we have anything like that planned? And I will tell you as time's going on, the time frame to spend the money is getting shorter and shorter. So it's going to be almost more imperative for us to kind of really think ahead more and more years and start actually designing projects ahead of time if we want to continue to use federal funding or state funding for infrastructure projects. Because they're going to be like what we call shovel-ready projects, which means you've designed it, you've kind of got all your easements done, your property acquisition if you need it, all that's ready to go. So when we award you funding, you can quickly spend it. That's what we're seeing happening in terms of at the funding level. Why would you want to use grants? Well, if some cities are smaller, they don't have the budget to take on a big project. If I'm a small city in Texas and I want to redo my main street, you probably don't have the funds in your general fund to cover that cost. So in this case, you pay a portion of that project and the state gives you the money for the rest. And so that's one way to do it. Or in the case we have a trail bond fund, let's say if I want to try to make those trails go further, well, if I apply for grants, I only got to spend 20% of that cost for the trail project. I can then take that money I would have spent for the whole project and put that toward other projects. So those are some of the reasons we typically use grant funding. Now, by following grant funding, you now have more regulations, more oversight, and sometimes some additional costs because you get the state and federal government involved. What can you use grants for? At the transportation level, you can get it for design, construction, or both. If you go down the design route, there's definitely a lot more oversight. You're going to use all the federal or state standards for all your projects, whereas right now we're just using it for construction. So the state does review it, which you'll see in the advanced funding agreements. There's a portion we're going to have to pay directly to the state, and that's for their oversight of the project. But it's nowhere near as onerous as if we got them involved at the design level. So we'd save money on the design, but it's just a lot more work for staff on the back end and along the way to meet all the requirements to design it to their standards. So now we're down to what we're actually talking about tonight. What is an advanced funding agreement? Well, it's an agreement between the applicant, in this case it's us, and whatever entity you've applied to. In our case, it's TxDOT is the one that's actually issuing the funding. Although it went through COG, COG's kind of the pass-through for their TxDOT funding. It also establishes the type of funding. So we've seen two different terminologies. We had CMAQ, which is for the Denton Drive project, which we'll talk later on tonight. For the Valley View one, which we're going to discuss now, is surface transportation block grants. Those are typically for straight-away road projects, not for the alternative means of getting around the city. Typically, as an applicant, you got to pay 20% of the total cost. We did something different for ours, which I will get into. We use what are called TDCs, Transportation Development Credits. But right now, let's just stick to the basics of AFAs, and I'll get into TDCs here in a minute. So again, the funding, the AFA tells you the type of funding you've received or you're going to receive. And then also the bigger thing is outlines who's doing what at the project. Is the state overseeing it? Is the local entity overseeing the project in terms of project management? It can go either way. Kind of your payment protocols, reimbursement protocols, how quickly do we have to submit invoices to demonstrate we paid that, or receipts in our case to get reimbursed? What are those things? What else do we have to submit for that? What's our timeline look like? What's your deadline to get your submittals in order to get reimbursed in time before the funding goes away? It also includes the project limits, the termini, so from street X to street Y, whatever type of project you're working with. That's outlined in your AFA. And then there's this other contractual, it's a contract essentially between the two parties, so it outlines the other boilerplate things. So, any kind of questions just in general, I covered that pretty quickly. There's a memo attached to, if you like, what did you just tell me? There's a memo that is attached to the Denton Drive one downstairs that you can read. It kind of goes over the same things I just covered. So the project details, and this is outlined in the advanced funding agreement. It goes from Denton Drive, so just west of the Dart line, to Nestle. PD 86 kind of lays out the plan for this portion of the street. It goes from 6 lanes down to 4. This allows you to have more walkability on the north and south sides. It also allows for on-street parking. So that's what that, if you're going to take away lanes, it's going to be for the on-street parking and for these other amenities. So as it says, we're going to have on-street parking. Again, this conforms to the PD 86, the requirements of it, and also the sidewalks. We're trying to make a connection from the Rawhide Greenbelt, get folks down to the Firehouse Theater. If someone wants to walk to Cox Farms, the restaurants down there, we're trying to provide those connections to get folks down there. That means other than getting in your vehicle and driving there. So PD 86, this is from PD 86. You haven't seen this photo before if you haven't looked up the most recent ordinance we passed. This is what the station area should look like in theory. So you have wider sidewalks, on-street parking, the buildings would be up closer if we meet the design conformance standards of the PD. So on-street parking would be on both sides. Ideally, 6-foot sidewalk. So again, allows pedestrians more ease to walk. I don't know if any of y'all used to use the sidewalks, especially on the north side of Valley View. Right in front of Meineke, that's a very narrow sidewalk. If you want to walk with your friend or your spouse, whatever the case may be, good luck walking hand in hand, side by side. I'd be in single file line going down that portion of the sidewalk just because it is very narrow. So for this AFA, we've been in the process of this from, I think, 2020 when we started this one. The total estimated project cost is $3.523472. That includes, in this case, we use TDCs for a portion of this, and then we also have a portion we pay for MAT. So we got through the process trying to figure out all the funding for Valley View and Denton Drive, the other project going on, as well as the I-35 construction at the time for the betterments. We had a meeting with the COG staff trying to figure out, all right, how do we do this? We got 3 major projects going on in Farmers Branch all at once. But the thought was do them all at once. Don't do Denton Drive, wait a year, then tear up Valley View, wait a year, then tear up 35. Just make it miserable for a little while, get it over with, and then you're done. Your projects are over with. So how do we come up with the funding? What the city has done, which will be coming to you at a later date, is we use what are called transportation development credits. In your memo, I said this is not real money, and that is true. What we do is we adopt what's called a policy bundle. So to qualify for TDCs, it'd be certified is the word they use. COG lists out a series of policies or things you must enact or be doing as a city. And if you have at least 50% of those on your books and you can demonstrate you're doing those, you qualify for a set amount of these TDCs. The more of those policies you enact, the more TDCs you can qualify for. What that allows you to do is not put up any money, but you are limited to only the reimbursable amount. So you don't actually put any no funds tied to it if you're using just TDCs. But you're stuck with that reimbursable amount and trying to keep everything below that amount, that fundable amount. The AFA says how much is totally reimbursable. That's kind of your limit. Part of that reimbursement has to go to the state. The state has oversight. So there's portions we'll have to pay out of the reimbursable amount to TxDOT for them reviewing plans, showing up once in a while to check on our projects. So if you're looking up here, the reimbursable to the city, that's the number you care about. So for the Valley View project, if we were trying to do this project only with this funding, we could not exceed that amount. Otherwise, you got to find all the money somewhere else if it goes over the 3.1. That's how much could be reimbursed from the state. So that excludes already what goes to the state. This is just what the city could qualify for our costs that are construction related. So down below, here's what we'll end up paying to the state. This is not covered by TDCs. This is something you have to pay to them. There's a direct cost, and there's also a portion because we maxed out our TDCs, so we had to pay 20% of the small portion. They broke the project up into 2 smaller projects. So in the memo, it talks about usually 2 project numbers. There's last 3 digits of one was 427, the last 3 digits of the other are 428. One we had to use TDC is a very small portion. The other part, we use TDCs only for our match. I don't expect all that to be clear, so. I'm gonna turn it over to y'all. You would start with just clarifying what I described in terms of funding. We can start there. If you want to talk about the project specifics.
So,
turn it over to y'all.
correct me, and I think you mentioned this. This was discussed by the council back in 2020 and sort of set in motion back then.
Yes, sir.
And the plan was to realign some streets in the station area.
Correct.
Council, I think they voted unanimously at the time to do that. And so this is the continuation of that, and now we're getting to the nitty-gritty of actually beginning work.
We're in the midst of starting to design the Valley View project, but TxDOT's not going to do anything to review it until we get the AFA signed.
Yep.
Denton Drive's kind of the same way. We're going to construct a small portion of the Denton Drive one already. It's already being constructed with the utility project that was approved in December. So we'll construct the portions outside of that. It'll be covered by the AFA tonight on regular session. Yes, all those were done almost 5 years ago is when this plan started. So transportation development is years, usually a long lag time or lead time, whatever term you want to use here, between when you get the funding and when you start down that path and when you actually get to the construction.
So while we're not taking any action, we are looking for, to give staff direction. So with that, Councilman Roman, any questions?
No.
Councilman Reed?
The 3.5 million total estimated project cost, how was that determined?
That's the
kind of
reimbursable amount.
dictated to us, or?
So that's the estimated cost of the project. It also includes our TDCs, which again, not real dollars. It's also what we got to pay the state. So it's all those numbers rolled up into one. So that's why the number you want to focus on as council is this number. That's what the city would get reimbursed. These other numbers are TDCs and what we got to pay back to the state. So that's a lump on top of that. So you include that into the total project cost.
So if the project costs more than that.
Correct. We got bids back and there came, let's say, if this is our only funding source, if we're trying to make this whole project work at $3.19 million, we got our bids back at 3.3. We have to come back to y'all and say, okay, here's our funding source. We budgeted our total amount we could possibly reimburse, assuming everything goes to plan. And we got all of our ducks in a row in terms of reimbursements. It's 3.19. Council, do you want to authorize this bid? If not, we got to reject the funding and just, we're done with the project. That's kind of the same thing now. If you're not interested in this, then I have a serious conversation with COG tomorrow about the funding we're getting ready to give up. And walking away from this $3 million, anyway, we'll have the conversation, but that's kind of that's what I'm looking for direction for. If y'all say, we got no interest in this, and we're gonna have a serious conversation with COG tomorrow about giving up the money and the plan and the time we've all kind of put into this. So it's not, I don't mean it's a threat, it's just there's a big implication with this project because of the time a lot of people have spent on this. That being said, I know you have questions, want to talk about the design, what we're looking at, so please, let's discuss.
That's all I have.
All right. Councilman Baird?
Thank you, Mayor. So the design is not set in stone yet?
Correct.
Okay. I'm extremely hesitant to take away lanes.
Okay.
Pretty much ever.
Let me see.
I think we've talked about that.
Yeah.
So is it this whole orange line on the graphic?
Correct. Yes, sir.
Okay.
So if you look at that PD 86, that's kind of the street layout too. So we're complying with the PD.
Right. So everybody I've talked to about this, which isn't a whole lot of people, but residents are not for it that I have found.
So since you broached this subject, just so we as staff have a sense of kind of what some of y'all are thinking in terms of what you want to see. There's a whole term in terms of level of service, which we're not getting into details of what that means for traffic and traffic patterns. What do folks want to see in terms of traffic? Are we talking about 3 lanes? I don't want to wait more than one light cycle to get through it. I'm trying to get a sense of what the expectation is that makes folks happy. That's what's unclear to me.
Well, so at rush hour, Valley View's pretty busy.
Okay.
And if we take it down to 2 lanes, then we have on-street parking, so now we've got people stopping in that right lane, slowing traffic more to parallel park. And then we also have a dark crossing there.
Correct.
That at times is 2 minutes?
Right.
I don't know. So again, the picture is very pretty.
Right.
I understand the sentiment, but it's just, I'm all ears.
Great. Well, one of the things I just want
But-
to say is, one of the comments I've heard multiple times, you want people to slow down. You want to make sure people are complying with the rules. Everything I heard you say, all these things, what was the word you used over and over again? What does it do to traffic?
Well,
It's going to slow down traffic,
Thank you. So-
absolutely.
okay.
But it's also going to slow down where you want to get. And
Correct.
so I'm fine with other ways, but I don't, have we had any deaths in that area or?
You had a fatality not far from there just recently.
Really? Okay, sorry. to
Valley
hear
View in
that.
35.
Okay. Anyway, that was all I had. It's just, and again, I'd like to hear more.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to remind council that when this was originally discussed, the thought was, and Shane, correct me if I'm not remembering correctly, but in terms of trying to create a
Yes,
I
it's called the
use a
downtown.
quote, a downtown area.
Form-based code.
You know, we're investing in amenities in the area on Denton Drive. We have the restaurant park off B Street in Valley View. And so the thought was to slow traffic down, get people to notice these areas, hopefully get people to stop and patronize these areas, and just bring part of our city to life. And yes, is some traffic going to be impacted? Some might, but I don't think any of us know how much. Okay.
So you've kind of gone through this partially already with the Atmos gas line. You had quite a while there where you had 2 lanes of traffic, at least going eastbound on Valley View. Because Atmos took a long time to get the line installed. We're going down Valley View in that same area. So you got a sense of what that would look like, I think. You got a pretty
But-
good test case.
We knew there was a lot of talk about giving up lanes of traffic, and I think at the time I was not for it, but I ended up over many discussions being swayed to vote for this program, I believe, and as more or less an experiment, if you will, to try to create something in our city that doesn't exist now. So that's
We
all I
realize
say.
it's not for the whole city. That message is loud and clear.
Councilman Neal?
You mentioned briefly, can you tell me an overall timeline for this project? I know you're going to talk to somebody tomorrow, or you need to let them know something
No,
tomorrow,
if
but
y'all
overall-
said we are not interested in this, that'd be the phone call tomorrow morning. I'd be calling the guy and say, hey, the AFA, it's off.
Timeline duration for this kind of project, when would it start, when would it complete?
Well, technically, once we start doing some of these, the water and sewer, that's part of the project. We gotta get those done first. This funding does not, it's only for the flat work, the concrete. It will not cover any utilities. That's why we're trying to get some utilities done. So although we didn't call that as part of the Valley View project, those need to be done first so we don't have the same issue you brought up in concern. We're gonna put in a brand new road and they come right through and cut a trench right down the middle and replace our water line. That we're trying to get all that done ahead of time, so. Once it comes time to do this, we go forward with this project. You just get a nice road once we're all said and done with no cuts
Next
done.
year, 2 years, what are we talking here?
Working on getting design done, if everything goes well tonight, and then next, if there's or shaking your head saying, please stop, it'd be set up for action next council meeting for the actual approval of the AFA, because this AFA is not on approval, it's not for action tonight, we put up in the next one. Which then we need to hurry up and get our design done. It's been hanging out there. Now I'm going to ask you to, in terms of design, what's your expectation for designing this type of project, Ryan?
We're about 30% on design, proposed design right now. Once we get to 60, we'll start having discussions about the design and what it looks like, and bring some of those potential designs to council for comment. So depending on how long that takes, once we get design done, we'll start construction for this small stretch. With the amount of work that's gonna be done, you're probably looking at 9 to 11 months of construction. If we can get the design knocked out and get it started sometime in 25, we'll be finishing late 25, early 26, if all went well.
If I remember right, the funding shuts down in 27, I think.
Yes.
So we got everything submitted back to the state if we go forward with this by 2027, so we can get reimbursed in time.
We have another key component of this project that's tied to the ILA. Our ILA funding has a completion, drop dead, complete payment date of April 26. So we're with a delicate ballet right now, trying to dance multiple projects with multiple funding sources and multiple dates. But the closest date that we can actually push a lot of these projects out to is that April 26th, because they're all tied together. So we're pushing the envelope right now.
Have you engaged or gotten any feedback from the businesses up and down that roadway and what input they might have provided regarding this potential project?
When this all started, I'm not sure there's any engagement with the businesses. That doesn't mean we can't go do that now.
Like Firehouse Theater?
Correct.
other Places along?
I don't
Nothing
remember
yet.
what engagement was occurred. We just went and chased the funding in my department.
And you mentioned any cost overruns in the project would have to be covered fully by the city?
Correct. If the bids came back higher than what the total reimbursable amount is, we bring the bid to you and then decide, do we go forward with this bid or do we not? And
Yeah, I might want to concur with Councilman Beard regarding the narrowing of streets. Not seeing a design yet or having been able to see what the design is going to look like, or kind of hard to go forward. And secondly, not having any feedback from the residents in the area.
The narrowing of the streets is, this whole project, the whole funding of this project is contingent upon that.
I understand.
If we don't want to do that, then that's something we need to know, because that does kill the funding altogether. It has to be done.
Has there or will there be any sort of traffic impact study done to see?
Yes.
Yes.
There has been a traffic impact study done. I don't know what year it was done. Valley View was overbuilt. Denton Drive was overbuilt. Most of our major roadways were overbuilt for the amount of traffic they carry. But Valley View is one that was immensely overbuilt, especially once you get beyond 35, moving out west of town. But the 3 lanes, the amount of traffic that comes through town, there's not enough traffic to warrant 3 ways based on studies. I'm good.
Okay, Councilman Jackson?
Thank you, Shane. That was an interesting comment, actually, Ryan. Most of our major roads were overbuilt based on the amount of traffic that they carry. It could be why we have speeding issues.
Yes.
So no one's said the words yet, so I'll say it. This looks to me like road diet 2.0. I was not in favor of road diet. That was a much broader concept throughout the city. However, given the grand design of this particular area, I favor it. The current design says it goes from Denton Drive to Nestle, but the red line actually goes all the way up to Dennis.
The ILA is the extension, is the funding source
Okay.
for the extension.
Okay, so.
Because you have a sidewalk coming down the north side.
Yes, we're trying to create the connectivity all the way up to Rawhide Trail
Right.
for the pedestrian connectivity portion.
Okay, good, because on weekends, that Oren Good Park is jam-packed with sports events, and making the pathway from that park to Mustang Station more walkable, more safe, more inviting, I think really fits. you know.
You're slowing down traffic with that midpoint connection right there that we have at Firehouse Theater.
Right.
You're, by taking a lane out, adding the parking, pedestrians are not having to cross 6 lanes of traffic anymore.
Right. And you have wider sidewalks.
Yes.
Right, okay.
Crossing at those locations have been a major concern in the past.
And so the net cost, we're looking at $3.5 million project, but our net cost is about $462, which is the difference between the cost of the project and what gets reimbursed to the city, plus what we have to pay to the state. That 131 is not included in the delta between the 3.5 and 3.1?
It is, yes, sir.
Oh, it is,
Yes,
okay.
sir. It is.
All right, so we're looking at $333,000. Roughly, it's gonna cost us 10% of the total cost of the project.
It would have, but again, those are TDCs, so that's why there's no money actually.
The 131 is the actual cost after we subtracted our TDCs from the grant.
Okay.
Yeah, I think 51,000, that is a direct match for a small portion of the project, and then 79,000 for the state oversight costs, if I remember the numbers correctly.
And so there are 2 residential lots that are cleared at Nestle and Valley View. Are those city-owned? Are they privately owned?
They're city-owned.
They're city-owned. Okay.
They're in our inventory.
All right. Those are not planned for any kind of integration with?
They're not in phase 1 of the
Okay.
lot sales, but they're in our inventory, in our neighborhood Renaissance target area inventory.
Okay.
So we can decide what we're gonna do with Valley View, what we wanna do with the lots. It's
Okay.
for future.
So we could decide to sell those lots and let somebody build a house. We could decide to put those in a program
Yes.
where we build a house, or we could make a little park out of them and
Completely.
whatever we wanted. Okay.
More parking.
I mean, I'm favorable. Thank you, Mayor.
So you brought up a good point, and there is no disguising it. It is road dot, but in a very specific area. I've been one who's been very against road dot, but as I mentioned, excuse me, when this was discussed way back when, I believe it was unanimous that the council had approved this plan for the area. But here we are years later and new council. So I still support the vision of what we plan to do here, what we would like to do here. So I'm hoping that enough of council will agree that we can move forward with this.
I do have a few thoughts. So, as I'm listening to the discussion, one of the things that I am just can't help but to think about is that we're thinking about where we are now and making future plans, but we're thinking about where we are now in terms of vehicles using those roadways. We're thinking about how we're currently stocked in terms of homes and other residential housing like multifamily. But I think as this gets developed and if we were to reduce the lanes, there's more houses coming. There's the Havenhurst Apartments. There is the apartments coming next to the new multi-sport center. There are new townhomes that are coming on B Street. There are new homes that are being built in my district. There are potentially new townhomes that are being built just down the road from there. There are new apartments that are coming and new townhomes that are coming on the west side. And I hear from the residents out on the west side that there's this connectivity issue. They don't feel like they're part of Farmers Branch. They feel like they're out in an island on their own. And I think part of the reason for that is because 35, that's a natural barrier, creates that division. But I think what also will further promote that division is enhancing the difficulty that it is to travel from one side of the city to the next. So I worry that we already have a congestion issue on 35 in Valley View heading from the west side to this part of town over here. I know because I experience it often on a daily basis when I get stuck at that light. And I've had glimpse of what a potential road diet might look like already because those lanes are reduced while TxDOT is doing their thing. So I'm concerned that we're going to end up, if this moves forward, all of these new homes and new people that come into the city, now we're going to have a traffic congestion issue, and it's going to further promote this connectivity issue that we already have of making people on the west side feel like they're part of Farmers Branch. So it's just not something that personally I see that would be beneficial to the city at this time because of the lane reduction purposes. Maybe if it weren't on a main thoroughfare, maybe if it was right in front of some residential that, like Valwood, those are unique circumstances where I feel like there could be a case made. But as it stands, I just have some really deep concerns that I don't know that we're going to be able to necessarily alleviate tonight.
I'm just saying, as you go down this path, this direction you go, and you kind of walk away from that PD 86 design too. That's kind of the whole thing was predicated on these things we're discussing tonight. So just be aware of the bigger implications or some of the thought processes.
Go ahead, Ken.
Shane, are those the same, is that the same picture that was used when we looked at the Valley View Lane on the west side of 35? Wasn't there?
I'm not sure. I just went to the PD 86 and saw this one,
Okay.
took a snippet of it, and put it in this presentation.
Because I thought we looked at an urban area like this and designating the west side of 35 and creating walkability and retail and restaurants
Right.
west of 35.
That is correct.
Okay.
That
So,
35 corridor study I did a while back, kind of got to all that.
so it's not just going to be this Denton Drive to Nestle or to Dennis area. It's going to go on beyond 35. And the way that 35 has been designed is going to be completely different than what it is today, helping to connect the west side to Mustang Station area. Higher bridges, more lighting, more walkability, wider sidewalks, more safety. And so to give up the funding opportunity to connect that plan to the east side of 35 and extend it to Dennis, I wouldn't want to pass that up. And additionally, some of the overwhelming feedback we've gotten from residents and all the money and time we've spent in the comprehensive plan has been walkability and connectivity, right? We also hear from residents time after time about traffic and speeding. This is a natural traffic slowing measure. It accommodates the walkability demands of our residents, and it absolutely enhances our city far beyond what it is today in restaurants and retail and just the look of Farmers Branch. I mean, if you could have seen what Denton Drive to, let's say, the Firehouse Theater roughly looked like 15 years ago, it's vastly different today. And where we are today is just a stepping stone to get to where we want to be tomorrow. And I think this plan is a very natural next step.
I think you're absolutely right. And the area that you just mentioned is going to change even more. You know, in time, the tire store will be gone. The transmission shop, the muffler shop, they will be gone. And that area is becoming too valuable. The land is becoming too valuable there. We have a business that's going in over there, the new at-fault pickleball, that we've already made as part of the plan, the development plan there. They have to provide on-street parking. So they, at their expense, that they have to cut into their property to provide the ability to park there. Steps have already been set in motion years ago to plan for this, and now we're at that day to do it. We've got public works projects that are dependent on this. You wouldn't want to not do them, the public works projects, and do this program and then come back and say, oh, we should have done that, and have to go back. That's a bad spend of money. So I don't know whether we need to reach out to Mayor Dye. He was a very big proponent of this when it was first discussed. I have no reason to believe that his thought would have changed, especially since he now owns a business in Mustang Station. They want traffic slowing down and being able to go to their businesses. We want traffic slowing down and going to their business, going to the businesses in the area. There's going to be more foot traffic in the area by virtue of the multi-sport complex that's going in. That's just going to further the need for walkability in this specific area. Don't forget, we're not talking about changing the whole city. We're talking about changing one stretch of real estate.
And just to show you how long transportation thinks ahead, at the COG level, we're looking at making a light rail going from Irving up that current rail line that goes through right there, not the Denton Drive side, but the other side of 35. About a quarter mile past it, making that a light rail line. They'll go up to the Carrollton downtown station and up to Salina. That requires Salina and them also taking part in DART and giving funding for that. But that's 20 years out. But we're having discussions now about does that happen or does it not. The city's got to decide if they're willing to put the money up. If they don't, I don't think it goes anywhere. But if Salina, Prosper, and those folks want light rail to get out to them, bring in workforce to them using that manner, that's how far ahead transportation thinks.
I was thinking earlier when you were making a presentation, I would invite any of you all to go to the RTC meetings with me that are monthly over at the Council of Governments. And when they talk about the programs, the dollars that are being spent, transportation infrastructure, and they're 20, 25 years out. We've got a 2050 plan that we're working on with the Regional Mobility Coalition right now. So, I mean, and we're talking billions of dollars that are being spent in the north, in our area, in 4 counties. So this is a big deal. And yes, sir.
Sorry, I didn't
No, go ahead.
interrupt you. This reminds me of if you take a train ride from downtown Chicago out to the suburbs, there's a lot of beautiful little towns along the way that are very much like Farmers Branch. And what we're talking today is about progress. I think what we've experienced so far today with the DART stop has not been largely positive for our city, but as our city grows and we get more of these multifamily units on the west side and people are using mass transportation and they're using, bike or foot traffic to get to where they want to go, this is the right time for us to develop that area that's around that DART rail area for that type of traffic and activity.
I expect more and more. I mean, I use Waze on a daily basis, and I don't know how to get around Dallas. I just don't know which one's blocked. And so when I leave my son's bus stop in the morning, I plug in the Waze, and which way do I go? Do I go to the tollway or do I go down Northwest Highway and I'm up 35? Which one's quicker? And I suspect in time, you won't have to say that. Your car will probably just do that for you, the way things seem to be going and the way transportation management appears to be going in the future as well. There'll be a lot of connectedness between vehicles and transportation. So I suspect a lot of the concerns you have will be mitigated just due to the way technology is going. I could be totally wrong, but I've seen some of the presentations at the COG level, what they're looking at for traffic management. So,
Councilman Reed?
Yes, I can definitely empathize with what you're saying about the traffic coming eastbound on Valley View, trying to get under 35. Now, I'm not familiar with what the end result is going to be regarding the I-35 project, but is that designed to alleviate a lot of that? Because it seems going eastbound, a lot of the traffic is either headed off to enter 35 north or 35 south. Seems to be a lot of the backlog there.
Biggest issue with 35 right now is they have an exit blocked coming from southbound, and a lot of traffic is being diverted off onto the Valley View exit ramp. And because they pulled a turn lane out during construction, so there's quite a bit of storage that was taken off at that point. The reconfiguration that has not been completed moving further north, that created some congestion. And the way we're having to do the traffic signals right now, because the traffic signals were pulled out, temporaries put back in, and we're having to time under abnormal situations right now. And we've had to play with that timing consistently, trying to keep traffic moving, because it is a temporary solution with that traffic signal. We don't have the technology in there to do any type of AI timing or anything like that. Moving forward, we're looking at other programs to improve our traffic signals, which they're compatible with the current systems being used in Addison and Carrollton. They're a lot easier to time, a lot easier to manage because they can be managed from a smartphone. But it's all gonna have to come after TxDOT finishes what they're doing, because it makes no sense to spend that money. We're trying to put it into a temporary system. But a lot of what you're experiencing with your backup from west to east right now on 35 or on Valley View has to do with that timing issue and the excess traffic coming down from the Valley View ramp because of the way TxDOT has the ramp configured right now. Once all of this is done, you're not going to have all that traffic getting off of Valley View. There's going to be another ramp moving forward where they can exit to get off at Bellwood. Because if you notice, there's not another way to get to Bellwood. You have to cross Valley View. So that's primarily your main issue right now, getting to and from. Once all that's done and we can get traffic timing back to where it needs to be, then you're not going to have all of these congestion issues moving east to west on Valley View. That traffic's going to move a lot more fluid than it does right now. It's just we're contending with the TxDOT issues, and it's painful on a daily basis.
Thank you, Art. So that's, the long and short of it is, it's a temporary situation.
It is a temporary situation, but it's going to last for a little while.
Right, but it's eventually going to go away, so this project, which will take time as well, it's that slowdown, in my mind, doesn't seem like it's that big a factor to hold off on the project, because what they're experiencing now will soon be gone.
And I think you maybe missed the point I was trying to make. I wasn't saying that it was going to contribute to it. What I was saying was that it is a good foreshadow of what might be to come and what people might experience if this were to be reduced.
Right, right. My understanding of what you're saying, and I could be wrong, was that you're commenting on sometimes it takes 2-3 light cycles to get through that intersection. Once this is all said and done, that's not going to be an issue, so that the flow is going to be much better. So it's not as much of a point of segregation between east and west if the flow is going to be.
That's not what I was saying. I was saying essentially copy and paste that situation, whether it's resolved or not, and apply it to what we're talking about here. It's going to create a similar hurdle, because between where this is all going to be built, there's a light on Denton Drive, there's another light at B Street, and then there's another light on Dennis. So there's 3 lights. So we're just talking about one area where the lanes have been reduced. So I'm just saying, take that as a practice round of what we might experience later down the road.
Right, but my point, part of my point is, when I see coming down that road, because I go, coming from the west, I go through that intersection a lot as well. I see a lot of the traffic either taking a left to go 35 north or taking a right to go 35 south, and you have the traffic coming off the 35 south off-ramp that takes up a lot of time there. So I think the backlog there is somewhat artificial. And those other lights that are there, I don't see reducing the lanes as having that bottleneck type effect to that extreme.
How do you foresee the new multifamily developments that are coming and how they're going to be contributing to any congestion effect then?
Which ones are you talking about?
Well, we just had a presentation last council meeting of all the different multifamily developments that are coming.
Right, are you talking primarily in the west side?
That and the ones that are coming in the area surrounding where this development is going to be.
Right.
I think one of the things that we keep hearing, though, as those presentations are made, are people are working differently, though. Many people are working at home, and if they live in multifamily units, they may be working there. People want to live closer to where they work, so there's the promotion of walkability, whatnot. It's just, I'm not sure you can use today as a fair baseline, my opinion, on that. And you're correct, there are signal lights in the area, but once construction is done, then they get reprogrammed to move traffic more efficiently. And that's something that Public Works does on an ongoing basis. So, Allison, did you have a comment? I'm sorry,
Yeah,
come back.
I'm all set.
I was just gonna expound on this whenever you're ready.
I'm good, thank you.
Oh, so in 2012, that PD 86 was formed, and this plan since then is what we built B Street with. It had like shanty townhouses, or whoever said it 15 years ago. It was terrible. And so we showed the PD 86 plan to people to come and redevelop here with the thought that it would be a district, like a walkable district. Like if you've been in downtown Carrollton, you can't speed through it because you can't get away with it.
Right.
I get away with speeding where I get away with it, in certain areas, certainly not Farmers Branch.
Certainly
And not 3 times on Valley View. But, so that picture is what Denton Drive will look like one day with the multifamily that he's talking about. That's gonna be built one day next to multi-sport. But what I'm saying is, when you go back to the slide before, what you're looking at is a line, but what we're really talking about is a district. We're talking about slowing down and having a walkable district with art, with the crosswalk art in West Village near Lemon and, I forget the cross street, it's really neat. But anyway, it's the crosswalk art, just slowing down a district. That's really what y'all are considering. It's not just like a street project. It's a layer of so many different things. It's the PD 86, and it was extended on the west side of 35. It doesn't mean we have the money or it'll ever happen. It just means it has the property rights to happen. Now you have the property rights because you have the PD 86 here. And so you have the opportunity, even though it was planned a long time ago, doesn't mean you're stuck with it, but you have the opportunity to say if you want to do it or not. And we're not magicians, I don't know what the traffic's gonna look like, but I say going west right now on Valley View when you cross under the freeway is a nightmare because you have to decide really quickly if you're gonna turn left. And if you don't know, you hit the concrete block. But it's not gonna always be like that. It will be normal one day, in a long time from now. So.
December 2025. TxDOT tells me I'll be with them on Friday. They still tell me they're on schedule.
So I'm just saying, as you consider it, to me, it's not just an orange line, it's a layer of a multi-layer cake of a district. I know we named it, the arts district or whatnot, but really, when you're talking to property owners, we talk to businesses, and that's how we got Western Securities. We pulled out the PD 86 pattern book and we showed them, hey, this is what could be coming. We can't promise it comes to developers, but we can say, this is a plan, and more than likely will come. Because of discussions like now, do we want it or not? So it's a thought, and it's for a small concentrated area. It's not meant to be, just like downtown Carrollton, when you go, you're not gonna have people coming really fast on those streets, or West Village, if you've ever been
Yeah,
to
you can't.
West Village. It's just a thought.
Okay, we've got to provide some direction, and I'm really trying to wrap this up so we can move to something else.
Mayor, one thing for consideration. Shane, this wasn't queued for technical action tonight.
Correct.
You've got a lot of questions from the council and concerns here. It was still meant to be on a future, the next
Correct.
agenda for action. So if it's okay with, there's a lot of money involved with this. Would you all be okay if Shane went back and took your feedback and brought back that and had the final actionable decision at the next council meeting? So what I hate to do is turn away money and the next day you'll go, ooh, that might have been a good one.
What's the timeline?
Okay.
For.
You probably said it.
In this case, we need to get the AFA done, so TxDOT wants to get our design done. TxDOT can start reviewing our plans. So like I said, they won't take any action until you have an AFA completed and signed. They met with us once just to walk our design team through kind of what they're gonna need to provide at a very, very high level.
Okay.
And so they can know how to start progressing from there. But the bigger concern is that deadline, is this AFA has a drop dead date of 2027. So we have to have it built and all of our submissions to the agency for reimbursement by 2027. Otherwise, you lose whatever you have not
The
submitted.
beginning of 2027?
I'll have to get the exact date and I will have that next time. It's in the AFA. As a draft.
This will be on the next meeting agenda.
So you had referenced tough conversations tomorrow.
If you just told me tonight, everybody did this, I'd have a tough conversation tomorrow with COG about that. There didn't seem support for this from any of them. So it looks like we're gonna be backing away from this funding. That would be my conversation tomorrow morning. If all of y'all let it
Said
be.
no.
Correct.
But if we give you a definite maybe,
Right. So this one, I'm gonna keep going until you tell me no.
Okay.
okay,
And then that means go to the action, y'all decline it there, then I'll hold that conversation next day with TxDOT then.
okay, so it can continue, as long as you don't get a definitive
Correct.
no.
That's what I was looking for tonight. If every one of y'all is just outraged at me, it's like, why'd you even bring this for consideration? I'm like, okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Shane. Appreciate it. At this point, I'm going to, we're going to take a break on study session and go to, I'm going to read us into closed executive session. We'll take a 10-minute break, but let me go ahead and read now. Yes? Okay. So next will be D1. The city will convene into closed executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.074, personnel, to discuss and deliberate on proposals for city attorney legal services. Let's take a 10-minute break, get food, come back here. We can start just some dialogue and go from there.